Good morning, Janet Gorond here from Tribe Sober. I'm 1 minute late, for which I apologise. So I hope this was coming through okay. Please confirm if you can hear me. So today I'm going to be talking about cliches. Of course, a cliche is just a phrase or a saying that gets used so many times that it seems to lose all meaning. I think "have a nice day" is a classic, isn't it? How many times do we hear that? Now, the recovery world is swimming in cliches, as I've discovered over the last 6 years. So, plenty of cliches there. And I have to admit that since we've been running Tribe Sober the last 6 years, we've come up with our own list of phrases. You could call them cliches, but in fact, I think they're all pretty good ones. So when I decided yesterday afternoon that I was going to talk about this, I thought, well, let me have a look at what's out there, and I'm going to pick 5 good ones and 5 bad ones. But to my surprise, when I really started looking at them and thinking about them, I think there's some really useful ones there. And I came up without any difficulty, without any big searching. I came up with 14 helpful cliches. And then I came up with only 4, that actually I don't agree with. I probably could have found more, but I thought, well, let me settle for 14 helpful ones and 4 not so helpful ones. Oh, Lynette. Hi, Lynette. Morning, Lynette. So glad you're there. And you can hear me. So, the cliche that I find myself using the most, and I have to admit I kind of groan inwardly every time I say this because it is a bit Californian, but I often say it's a journey. But the thing is, it really is a journey. And when I think back to my journey, I spent 10 years in contemplation, really, because I couldn't bear the thought of not drinking anymore. So I tried to moderate, I tried to control it for 10 whole years. Obviously, that didn't work. But I used to look back at myself and think, oh, how stupid. Why didn't you just quit years ago? But I try to look back with more compassion now. And I realised I wasn't quite ready. I was contemplating and I was on a journey. And the positive thing is I had started that journey. And people that keep going back to day one, we say to them, you'll get there. You're on a journey. The only failure is to stop trying. And those of us that have gone through that low that we get in early sobriety, after a few months, we might feel a bit ugh and kind of lose interest and pleasure in everyday things and think, oh, this sobriety lark, it's not working for me. But we have to get through that and recognize that it's a journey, and that difficult bit is part of the journey. Progress, not perfection. That's also a good one. I think that might be from AA. But I've mentioned people that have to go back to day one again and again. But when they look at their record, if you like, when they look at their sober tracker, they discover that their sober stretches, as we call them, are getting longer and longer. So they're making progress, and that's all that matters. Very few people think, I'm going to stop drinking. They do it overnight and they get through it without any setbacks. A lot of us, people like me, I had my 10 years of just trying to control it. But once I'd accepted that I could never control it, then I was okay. And a lot of people are like me and they think, I can't do this anymore. I can't go through any more blackouts, any more health scares. I'm going to quit. And they do it. But other people, they have to go back to day one several times. And then eventually they will realize that they're just doing the hardest thing over and over again by keep going back to day one. Another one that Sue introduced me to, this is an AA one, I think. There's no problem so bad that a drink can't make worse. We just have to think of the pandemic, don't we? If ever there was an excuse to drink, that was it. And so many people used the pandemic to do that. So No problem, a drink can't make worse. I mean, what does it do if you have a drink to cope with a problem? Well, it numbs it, okay, for a little while, but then it comes back, and then you've got your problem and you've got your crushing hangover. You know, the only way to deal with a problem is to deal with it. And if it's out of your control, like the pandemic, then you need to find other ways of dealing with it. Other ways apart from numbing yourself with a poison that is going to hurt you. Sorry, I've got my notes in a muddle. I've got so many cliches here, they're all over the place. Right, another one. One of my favourite ones, and I think this is so true, an AA slogan again. One is too many, and 1,000 is not enough. And any of us that can't stop at one glass of wine will recognise this straight away. Because once our drinking's crossed a line, there's no going back, really. We have to accept that, you know, this isn't for us, alcohol is not for us, and we're going to move on and create, you know, a life we don't want to escape from. Is that another cliche? I seem to just talk in cliches these days, it's scary. But yeah, moderation. One of my most popular blogs was called 7 Things I Know About Moderation, and that's on our website if you want to have a look at that. Because the danger point is that there comes a time in early sobriety, for most people it's maybe a few months in, and they think, okay, I've not drunk for 3 months, I've proved that I'm not an alcoholic, I've broken that habit, so I'm sure I can have the odd glass of wine now. Well, you know, we've seen it over and over again, and for most people it doesn't work. Because people that can moderate alcohol, they just moderate. They don't, you know, join Tribe Sober. It's as simple as that. Another good one, this too shall pass. And yeah, early sobriety is difficult. You know, I mentioned that low period. But, you know, we have to keep going, and we have to stay strong and recognise that, yes, there'll be tough times, but this will pass. And we even know there's a name for that difficult low now, anhedonia, and Lynette's done an awesome Facebook Live, how to cope with, you know, what you can eat and drink to cope with those low times. But if we keep in the back of our mind, you know, this too will pass, it's not going to go on forever. Because sobriety is awesome, and those of us that have got over to the other side, you know, we recognise that. We're thriving in our alcohol-free lives. We know that, you know, it's just a fabulous place to be. But it took a lot of work to get here. And once you recognise it's not easy, but the hard times will pass and you'll be in a completely different place. Another cliche, if nothing changes, nothing changes. We're on to number 6 now. And yeah, I used to hang out with my drinking buddies, and I'd say, oh, I'm sure I'm an alcoholic. I can't seem to get through a day without a drink. And they'd all laugh and they'd say, oh, I know what you mean, Janet, you know, we're there too. So, you know, nothing changes. And this is part, we always say that we do this thing in 2 parts, you know. First of all, we stop drinking, and secondly, we have to learn to thrive in our alcohol-free life. And that means shaking things up a bit. You know, you can't just carry on with exactly the same routine when you stop drinking, because otherwise you'll always miss it. There'll be a great gaping hole there. So you have to reconfigure your life, find new interests, learn new stuff, and then you will begin to thrive. So remember, if nothing changes, nothing changes. Now we've got 2 lovely ones from our recovery coach, Lynette's. The last few I think were AA, apart from my It's a Journey, but now we're moving on to Tribe Sobers. So Lynette says, and we all love this one, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And the best example I can give you of that one is a personal one. My limiting belief, my great fear was I'll never be able to socialise without alcohol. So I knew the only way to overcome this belief was to force myself to do it again and again until eventually it was okay and it was comfortable. So I went out many times, not drinking, and felt uncomfortable, felt awkward, didn't enjoy myself at all. But I would write down the experience in my journal when I got home, and I would notice that over the weeks it got easier and easier. And eventually I got to a stage where I could socialize comfortably without alcohol. But I had to push myself, really push myself out of my comfort zone. I had to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Another one of Lynette's, which I also love, is get curious. Now, this reminds me of one of my emails that I wrote once, and I called it Be a Scientist in Your Own Life. And I had a picture of a scientist in a white coat. And I like the idea of trying to be an observer, what is going on here? So when we get this craving to drink, why am I desperate to drink? What's happened here? What's triggered me? Is it the time of day, or is it something that somebody said to me? Why do I want to drink? So rather than just being powerless and thinking, oh, I need a drink, and drinking it, just take a break, be curious, what's going on, write it in your journal. And remember, you're on a journey of self-discovery here, and it's pretty exciting to understand yourself better. So that's two awesome ones from Lynette's. Thank you, Lynette. Those ones have definitely entered the Tribe Sober lexicon now. And three more we've got in our Tribe Sober list. Now, these come from Lucy. She says often to people on our groups, you can only chase one bunny at a time. Now, if there's anyone watching this that is not in Tribe Sober, I'd better elaborate a little bit on the bunnies, or you'll think we're all crazy. The bunny fixation that we have comes from a blog that we all love by Claire Pooley. It's called The Obstacle Course. And Claire creates an analogy between an obstacle course and our journey to sobriety. She says it's a difficult journey, it's full of high fences, muddy fields, storms, but you just have to keep going, and then eventually you will get to a field, a beautiful sunlit field where there's flowers everywhere and little bunnies hopping around. So we say, that we need to get to that bunny field, because the essence of Claire's blog is that you must keep going, because if you keep going back to day one, you're just doing the hardest bit over and over again. And the reason why Lucy captured this only chasing one bunny at a time was because we get quite a lot of people joining up, and they say, okay, I joined today, I'm going to stop drinking, I'm going to go on a diet, and I'm going to take up exercise and stop smoking. And we say, no, that's not going to work. One thing at a time. You can't win on all fronts, unless you're superhuman, and you probably aren't, because you wouldn't end up with a drinking problem. So just focus on the sobriety, because I see sobriety as the foundation of the rest of my life, and I know that I couldn't do a lot of other stuff if I didn't have that foundation of sobriety. So we say just prioritize the sobriety, and if you're desperate for a bar of chocolate, then eat it, although we do say that fresh fruit will satisfy those cravings as well. But don't try everything all at once, because you'll end up losing all the bunnies. Just see it visually, and chasing bunnies, they'll all get away, won't they? Another classic from Lucy, she's even designed an exercise around this. If anybody's watching this that wants the exercise, just say. It's called Find Your Why. Now, we all have really important reasons for wanting to ditch the drink. My personal reasons were health. I'd had breast cancer and I was getting terrible blackouts. And I knew that, my health was all over the place, not to mention my marriage, which was very wobbly due to all the drinking. So Lucy maintains we need to find our why and make a list of our why and look at it every single day, and always have it, somewhere close by. Because what happens is, when you get through those first few months of sobriety, you get a bit complacent and you think, okay, I've proved I'm not an alcoholic, surely I can have the odd glass of wine now. And the thing is, is you can't. So you need to keep looking at why you're doing this, and that will reinforce your motivation day after day, because they're big reasons. You know, it's usually about saving your own life because the health issues are huge. And final one from Lucy is like a reframe. I remember we were at the Zoom cafe one Saturday afternoon, and she suddenly had a light bulb moment there and then, and she said, I've just realised this problem, because one of our people at the cafe was saying, oh, well, my drinking problem. And Lucy piped up and she said, it's not actually a problem. What you've got here is an opportunity. So I think that's a beautiful way to look at it, because if you think that it's an opportunity to create a whole different life, you know, it's an opportunity to feel better, to look better, to improve your health. And not only that, you get time, you get lots of time to discover other interests, to meet new people, and to do new stuff and to thrive in your alcohol-free life. It's a chance, it's an opportunity to change the, I can't say this word, trajectory of your future. It really is. It's a huge opportunity. So don't let it pass you by. So we're nearly there. I think we're on our, we're getting through these cliches. Just let me get them all listed up here so I don't forget any. Yes, we're nearly at number 14 now. So Sue came up with this one, so I think it might be AA. Stick with the winners. That was quite a new one to me, but I think there's definitely something there, isn't there? And it made me think of that quote by a motivational speaker. I think he's called Jim Rohn. And he says that we become the average of the 5 people that we spend the most time with. And I think that's very true. And if all of our friends are heavy drinkers, then, you know, of course we're going to end up as a heavy drinker. So hang out with the winners. And, you know, Tribe Sober is all about community, and I like to think that we are winners. So rather than hanging out with your drinking buddies, you know, give us a try. We're not all sober by any means. Well, I am eventually, but you know, we're all striving to thrive in our alcohol-free life. You know, those of us that are sober, we're still doing the work and making sure that our life gets better and better. And we're all there for each other, and we're all encouraging each other. So if you'd like to give us a try, go to tribesober.com and hit the Join Our Tribe button. Now, one of my absolute favourites, which I think is so true, is simply connection is the opposite of addiction. And I said, you know, Tribe Sober is all about community. So that's really the kind of founding belief of our tribe, I think. And for those of you that don't know where that comes from, it comes from an experiment that was done many years ago. I think it might have been the 1950s. The experiment is called Rat Park, and it's a bit cruel to rats, but it's a very interesting experiment. What happened is this scientist, he put lots of rats in cages alone with no toys, nothing really except a little kind of food thing, very plain food, and then water, and then next to it water laced with heroin. So he left these rats to their own devices for a while to, you know, survive day after day, week after week. I'm not quite sure how long it took. But eventually 95% of those rats became addicted to the heroin. They resorted to the heroin. They had nothing else to connect with, so they created a relationship with heroin, much as a lot of lonely people will create a relationship with their alcohol. And the other part of the experiment, so once he proved that bit, then he decided, let's look at the other side of the coin. So he created a great big cage, which he called Rat Park. And he had lots of toys in there and lots of lady rats. You know, there were plenty of people to play with, to have sex with. and toys and nice food and water, and again the heroin water was there. So he observed, Rat Park for a few weeks, and something like 3 or 4% of them got addicted, because connection is the opposite of addiction. So that's a beautiful example, and we connect with each other via, we're always chatting away on WhatsApp, and of course we've got a website forum, and we've got our Zoom cafe every Saturday afternoon. If you're watching this and you're not in our tribe and you'd like to come to the Zoom cafe, just let me know in the comments and I'll send you an invite. So if you'd like to know more about that experiment, then there's a TED talk about it by an English journalist called Johann Hari, and it's called "Everything You Thought You Knew About Addiction Was Wrong, or Is Wrong." So check that out if you're interested in those little rats, because it's pretty fascinating stuff. Now, number 14, we're finally there. What time is it? 20 minutes. Okay. So one that I'm beginning to use more and more, because it's in our 7-step sobriety model. In our 7-step model, we've got step 1 is connect. That's the foundation, because it's the opposite of addiction. Step 2, we say prepare. If you need to learn some theory, change your mindset, come to a workshop, go shopping, get your alcohol-free drinks installed, do the prep. And then step number 3, there's no putting it off any longer. You need to actually do the work. And I always say it takes courage and it takes confidence to give up drinking, because it's not at all easy. Remember, in those early days, not drinking hurts. I don't know if that's a cliche, but I find it useful to always remember that. Not drinking will hurt. It's not going to be easy, because you feel awkward. Your friends all think you've gone bonkers. You don't know how to relax. You've lost your best friend, really. So you need to hang in there and do the work. So those are all the useful ones. Now I'll just come to 4 that I personally disagree with. There might be, out of those, there might be 1 or 2 that do work for you, so I'm not rubbishing them by any means. It's all about finding what works for you. But 4 that irritate me these days are these. I mean, the classic one, isn't it? Drown your sorrows. We've all tried that, and we know that it doesn't work, because all it does, I've already said, it just numbs out the issue for a while, and then it comes back and you've got hangover to cope with as well. And the pandemic was classic, in that so many people said, oh God, we're all going to die and it's the pandemic, so we might as well drown our sorrows. And I posted an article from the British Times on our Facebook page yesterday, and it's saying that there's been a 20% increase in alcohol-related deaths in the UK since the pandemic started, and that's horrendous. Alcohol is so bad for our health, and that's what happens when we drown our sorrows. Because if you think about some people that stepped up their drinking at the beginning of the pandemic, and there have been many, many people, that's why they're seeing the death rate go up. What's happened is this pandemic, it's been more than a year now, so all it's done for you is this excess drinking is a year later you're even more dependent on alcohol than ever, and your health will have deteriorated, and you will have got even more anxious about everything, because alcohol affects our mental health as well as our physical health. So we have to, if we can control what's going on, then we need to address that problem rather than numb it away. And if we can't control it, like the pandemic, then we just have to find other ways to cope. Another cliche that I disagree with, this is an AA one, I think, and if it works for you, fine, but I don't like the idea of white knuckling it, because for me that's all about willpower. And that might have a role to play in early sobriety, but there's been many much research done recently on willpower. And the thing about willpower is it's not sustainable. It's a bit like a muscle, it gets tired. So you might be okay for a few weeks on willpower, and indeed that's how I used to try and moderate, but then it will all come crashing down. If your sobriety is going to be sustainable, we believe that you need a whole different mindset. You have to see alcohol differently. You have to see through all the kind of BS that the marketing industry and the liquor industry is feeding you, and see through the peer pressure. And until you recognize that alcohol adds nothing but trouble to your life, then you'll be relying on willpower. So I don't like white knuckle it. And then another classic one, which you'll all recognize, red wine is good for you. Obviously planted by the liquor industry. I used to jump on these articles as a drinker, I remember, and that's why they plant them all the time, and they publish them, because people will see a magazine on a stand and it'll say red wine is good for you, and they'll go, oh, let's buy that one. And if you look into the history of this statement, it was based on a very small study that was done many years ago, and they just took a cohort of ladies, older ladies that were over 55, I think they were between 55 and 60, and they gave these ladies 3 small glasses of wine a week for a couple of months, and they measured their heart rate at the beginning, at the end. And they deducted that some of those ladies, not everybody, but for some of them, their heart rate was lower, their blood pressure was improved. So from that came, red wine is good for your heart. And everybody, from teenagers to 40-year-old men, they were just grasping on this. And I did the same when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I swapped my, bottle of white wine every evening for a bottle of red wine, because red wine is good for you. So, in a nutshell, red wine is not good for you. And one day at a time, again, I apologize if this works for you, and don't let me change that. But I personally connect this with the white knuckling thing, because, you're using willpower to get through one day at a time. And what I don't like is that kind of links with this lifetime struggle thing that some people seem to think it is. And again, I know it links a little bit with AA and going to meetings forever and ever, because many people do. I've met people that have been going to meetings every week for 40 years. And our approach is quite different, and so is our experience. And we find that the people that we work with, we give them the tools, we give them the community, they've got our 7-step model as a framework. And we find that the average person, okay, they have to maybe allocate a year if they've had a serious problem. But the first 6 months are about doing the work. And if you really make it a priority and you really do the work, then you can knock this thing on the head in 6 months. In 6 months, you can stop the drinking habit. And then the rest of that first year, the other 6 months, you should be devoting it to reconfiguring your life, picking up new connections, new interests, learning new stuff, exercising, and just thriving in your alcohol-free life, setting a pattern for the rest of your life. So that's it, really. That's my 14 helpful cliches, 4 that I personally don't like. And as I say, when I started this research yesterday afternoon, I had no idea how helpful a lot of these cliches were. So I really hope that you've listened to the 14 that I've gone through and picked up a few, because just as we should have our why lists next to us all the time, maybe we need some of those cliches just to remind us and to keep us going. So I'm going to look at the comments now. So I hope that you've got some of cliches of your own, you guys. So let me have a look. Hi, Lynette. It's a journey. I'm glad she shares my cliche. Progress, not perfection. Yeah, when we feel overwhelmed, which is easy to do. creating a life we don't want to escape from. Okay, I think we need to accept that this is a cliche, but we like it and we're adding it to our list. Yeah, Claire, you were saying you didn't like that. Well, that's the danger, isn't it, with all of these cliches, because they sound trite. And if you're not in the right mood, you think, oh, be quiet with your cliches. But they are helpful. Hi Chantal, no worries that you're late. This is all recorded, so you can find it on my YouTube channel, or I think it sits on the Facebook page for a while. So I hope you've heard the 14 cliches. So liberating. Yeah, this too shall pass. I remember for me, I found it very liberating when I realized actually we weren't put on this earth to be happy 24/7, you know. To be human is to have ups and have downs, and it's, you know, in spite of what Instagram tells us, you know, not everybody is happy all the time. Yeah, Claire. Yeah, definition of insanity. Keep making the same mistake. Yeah, absolutely. Being a scientist in your own life. Yeah, you're absolutely brilliant at that, Lynette. Hi, Irene. Yep, sobriety is the foundation of life. Is that another one for Chantal? My God, I think we need, actually, I'll get, who is it, good at graphics, maybe Monica, but I think we need a nice graphic of all Tribe Sober's cliches. Because, yeah, I mean, I just said that during the talk, didn't I? The foundation of life, they just come out naturally. I speak cliche these days. That's what 6 years of working in the sobriety field has done for me. Yep. The reframe, yeah. I mean, Lucy, she's got a brilliant way of looking at things. Stick with the winners, and he's been sober. Yeah, I saw such a funny thing on a film last night, nothing to do with sobriety, but it was a guy, and he was in a queue. It was a sports film, and he was in a queue of people, and he was like the short guy, and he said, I learned quite early on that it's important to be in the right kind of crowd. So he shifted from this line where he was the short one to another line of short people where he was the tallest one. Just made me laugh. So yeah, stick with the winners. And the average of 5 people we spend the most time around, I think that is really true. Connection, the opposite. Yeah. When I'm isolating, time to connect. Yeah, I think that's true, very true these days, isn't it, Lynette? Because we're all, I mean, I'm pretty comfortable with this Zoom world now. I'm using it all the time. I don't physically see many people, but I know I've got to try harder. And I met one of our tribe for a coffee physically the other day, and it was lovely. It was richer and different. Oh, great, Claire. Okay, I'm going to find you, Claire. I'm sure I can find you via Facebook. I'll send you the invite. Connect, prepare, do the work. One day at a time. Oh, Chantal, thank you. Need the cliches, yeah. Okay, well that's awesome. I hope you've got some new cliches there, if any of you are watching and listening to all these things for the first time. And I'm going to go now, have my coffee. So lovely to chat. Bye, guys.